Hello all, we're back here on Galvin Valley for another episode. As I terminated the last episode, I had to fix our combine a little bit. It made a mistake when I put a new piece into it, namely this piece right here where the gear shift is sitting in the console. I mistakenly made that a hard object. It should have been a non-object, or basically one where you could only see the shape representation. And so instead, it was a static object being hauled around in this combine, and everywhere it went, it was sending warnings into the log. And just to make sure that it's no longer doing that, why don't we let's move it back. Yep, I think we're all good. That kind of looks a little bit, I don't see any warnings in the log. It looks a little funny kind of from that angle. Maybe I'll take a peek in cab. Oh yeah, our guy's trying to figure out how to hold it again. I think I've basically given up. I did the best I could, but sometimes you can't fix everything all the way up. Let's see if we can get him going on our auto combine. Looks like he's off to the races. We'll get our other machinery up and running. We are almost done here, so I'm getting kind of excited to get this done and get on to something different as we farm it here. Maybe what I'll do, assuming the combine can figure out where to go, I'm going to head uphill here and go grab our windrower. You know, that doesn't look quite right. This right here. I'm going to try to tighten this up just a little bit so it makes more sense. And oh, if we could look down on ourselves like this in real life. But of course you can't, so gotta make do with doing it from the old cab. This is part of the reason I enjoy doing it out of cab and farming sim, so you can see stuff like that. Oops, let the traffic go by. I don't want to tangle with them. I'll come over here to give it our traditional 2 rounds. Maybe I can do that while the combine is continuing its thing. Get this closer to done. It almost seems like my volume has turned up. Give me just a second here. I'm going to try to fix this. Oh yeah, it looks like it's way up, so I'm going to knock that down. We'll hop back in and there, that's a little better. Of course, I'm sure most people would probably rather hear the tractor than they would to hear me talking. I am going to have one whale-load lot of bales to make, so that's going to tax some game resources. And speaking of taxing resources, something I did on here, maybe I'll have to make a video on it sometime, is I bumped up, oh shoot, I missed a little bit there. I bumped up the viewing distance so you can see the straw, the crop at, oh, what is it, 200 meters? I think when Wild Wild Wes made the map, he had it down at 80 meters, 70, whatever the standard is. You know, which means you have that silly viewing circle that you gotta deal with. And I realize I don't have that strong of a computer, but I'm willing to have a drop in my FPS just to bump up the quality. So I don't have to see that silly circle, at least not out of ways. Actually, look at it there. I'll just bring my mouse. It is way out here. So it's rendering everything in here to show the grass bits, and it shows this whole field. I just like that a little better because, well, I'd rather see the prettier textures kind of in the foreground than the stuff in the background, where it kind of makes a smear type color. And here's a little test. Are we going to be able to pull the hill here? I think I can, I think I can. Have my differential locks on. It's four-wheel drive. I know it's bumpy in here. I've even tried to smooth it a little bit over time, or I did more back when, when you take this equipment over the bumps and it doesn't hardly want to pick anything up, like not move the grass, or if you're planting, it doesn't want to plant, or if you're cultivating, it doesn't want to cultivate, or some such silly nonsense. So I think we have that fixed now with a little script that I made. One of these days, maybe I should just show people kind of what that is so they can use it on their own, the FS15 maps, if they ever have a need. Yeah, this is not really liking the hill here, but I don't have much choice at the moment if I'm going to go around the edge twice. Trying to get up top. Yeah, this is just a brutally steep hill. And yeah, in just practical terms, I don't know if in real life you'd even farm something this steep. Maybe there's some areas of the world they don't have much choice, but I know the farm that I worked on growing up, we didn't have anything this steep. I don't know how we've been able to keep it on the hill. One of our neighbors, I'm thinking of Lone Oak now. I'm actually starting a series kind of over on it also, and kind of running concurrently with this. One of the neighbor farmers that my uncle spent a good deal of time with, they sometimes farmed some of their stuff together or helped one another on certain projects, namely field burning. That seemed to be a common one. They would help each other out, but this neighbor had some really steep land, some so steep that, couldn't be farmed, and he didn't. But he had a few harrowing tales of being on a steep piece of ground and what it feels like when your machine loses contact with the ground underneath and decides to start moving, and what that feels like as an operator and what you have to do to kind of prevent it. I remember one story from him. He was in a windrower, which is pretty stable, even on the steepest ground, because you figure, the windrower has 4 points of contact with its tires, and then it has the whole header out in front of it that is virtually sitting on the ground. So that's even more points of contact. You wouldn't think something like that would slip, but it did. He got his tire, I think, over the edge. He was right on the edge of a really steep place. It was so steep they didn't farm, so they just left it be. Well, somehow his tire got over the edge, and he tried to get it back up on top, but failed. And at some point, the whole machine just slipped over the hill and went down the steep patch. Now, fortunately, it wasn't on the edge of the field, to where it continued down into a canyon or something like that. It was just a steeper area of the field, one that sometimes we call a field eyebrow, because if you look at it from a distance, it kind of takes the shape of an eye, if you will, where the top is more of a flat line, and then it kind of curves going down towards the bottom, just kind of has that half circle type shape. Well, he ended up at the bottom of the half circle, and kind of like he explained, you get down there, he had slammed the header to the ground, but still went over backwards, and fortunately didn't turn the machine over or anything like that. He made it to the bottom, and what to do, he get out, he said, he cleaned his shorts out, I think figuratively, and maybe he looked at the machine to make sure it wasn't damaged in any way, and I guess headed back up the hill and continued where he left off. But those could be the perils of working on a hill, and I know the field where that happened, and it is really steep in there. And yeah, we've helped to burn that field before, and you really got to be careful. because the hill can, if you aren't paying attention on the hill and you don't have your tractor or whatever machine you're in the right gear, it can run away from you, and there may not be much you can do with it if you're once you start moving. So just something the operator needs to be careful of. Well, looks like I got the obligatory 2 rounds out of the way. Wonder what I'm set up for GPS. Yeah, I don't know if this is where... Maybe I can. Oh, maybe I will. Dip right in here. This will kind of mess up my rows a little bit, but that's right. Oh, that silly combine. Thankful to have it. It goes around and around. I think that's kind of a cool effect. It isn't just the back and forth, the Giants in-game hire mode, but it isn't perfect. And I think, like all the modders, this one here too included, it continued improving on the mod, as they went into later versions. I got this little series I'm doing on Lone Oak in 17. And basically, it's the same mod, the Auto Combine mod, although in 17, the mod author merged Auto Tractor and Auto Combine, made them the same mod. And I think I was just using it not that long ago within Lone Oak, and it works a whole lot better. Although on that particular instance, I was using it for ground tillage. This is definitely a challenging hill for that little old combine. Yeah, it's leaving stuff kind of unharvested, if you will. It's just so steep. Just unbelievable. And I love it. I love it. I always enjoyed working the hill fields when I was on the farm, and I like seeing them in here too. Keeps warning of a repair that's needed. And it's all because, let me see. Yeah, he's on his way back. Last episode, he was nosing into things. And I even dialed back the amount of damage. I'm using the damage mod in here. I like having something in there so it forces some repairs and maintenance on equipment. That's something the base game doesn't really have in it, or this version of it didn't have. But it was very aggressive, and I dialed it way back. And it's still, that's going to cost a fortune, and I'm, 40,000 in the hole. So I'm kind of dreading fixing the tractor up. But I think at a certain point, if you don't fix it, it's driving slow and that kind of thing. When I worked on the farm, I don't recall, when we'd be out harvesting, that there was somebody coming in immediately behind us to windrow the grass for baling. Some of it in the earliest years was because we burned it, we didn't bale it at all. But towards the later years, we knew more of it was being baled, and I think they farmed that out. They had a contractor come in to do the baling work. Now I think that they've switched back. They handle all their own straw and market it themselves. But for a while they had someone else come in and handle that part of it. And I don't remember them showing up while we were combining to start working around us. Kind of like I'm doing here with our field. Our combine is still going, but I'm coming in here to do this windrowing. But I know in later years, the field outside of her house, it was just like a three-ring circus. It was amazing. They had a couple combines come in, and the field outside her house, it isn't a very large field, it's maybe, oh, 15 to 20 acres. So they had a couple, three combines going in there, and then right on the heels of that, I think there was one or two guys windrowing, and it wasn't even just windrow. They had the baler going while the combine was in the field, and that can be a little bit dicey, just for the sake of efficiency, because, well, I mean, the combine still needs to turn around to do what it does, and if you stack a whole bunch of bales in its way, you just made the operator's job a little more difficult. We are almost done with this. I'm pleased to get this sucker nailed down and get over with the harvest. I think maybe we're all getting tired of staring at that little combine. But it's been a good little machine to use on these hills because it keeps her level, or close to level. So we can have a good threshing experience. And look at that, it's swinging wide. I don't know why. So we're going to go try to help our combine out because it appears to have lost its way. I'll try to get it set back down where it needs to be. There we go. Turn it back on higher, although I probably could do better just freehanding it. Yep, I think I'm going to freehand the rest of this. I think I can manage that. I've driven a combine before. So we can try to just get this field done. Maybe I should do a little bit of cab here. See here, I wonder if the player is sitting quite right. This just shows you how bloomin' steep this is. I can't even find if I'm in the right spot. Aha, there we go. But this is so steep, you can't even hardly see out the window to see where you're supposed to cut into the crop. So it's probably just where the person's head is, kind of in this particular cab. Maybe in real life, at least I hope in real life, the visibility is quite a bit better, than what would show up in here. Just a little bit more and we'll have it licked. One last little sprig. I got some repair to do on this thing also. Every time, and I haven't been able to figure that out. I'm pretty sure it's something in the XML where when I turn the combine on, it kind of jerks the header to one side or the other. May have something to do with its movement in hillside. And I wouldn't particularly care. It's just that it's causing damage. Now did I... Alright, maybe I can sneak through. I did some more damage. Good grief. Okay, I'm gonna hire him and turn him loose. We'll just start him through here, but I gotta probably go deal with... Oh yeah, he's coming up here. I think I have another course that I can put him on. Did I set it up? This is field number 8. It's our final field now. 8. Aha, combi to storage. No, 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 don't head off that way. Get all confused. No need to be confused. Maybe what I need to do is to stop my combine right there. I'm just going to hold it right there, and I'm going to put out the unloading auger. That's probably a reasonable place to do it. That is something significantly different between generally speaking, American maps versus this one here, which is based on a Scottish, UK, Northern Ireland type presentation, if you will, is the tightness of some of the fields. You know, may, maybe what it is we're just poorer drivers in America, so we give ourselves a little more space. And I'm sure there's probably areas in these other countries where they have plenty of space, but it seems like there's a lot tighter driveways, entrances, fields that go clear up to the edge of something, and it's a little bit hard to maneuver around. And it seems like here we give ourselves a little bit more space. But that being said, I don't mean that as a complaint at all. I love seeing different styles of farming around the world, different ways of how the countryside is, and this map is just a representation of that, which is pretty cool. So we're down to this last little patch. So hopefully here in a few minutes, maybe even I'll plan probably on terminating the episode once we have this done. That's probably a logical place to to turn it off. But let me see if can I see. Yeah, so but you know that combine's going to be coming around, so I don't want the tractor's nose to be pointed right there, because then it's going to have trouble coming around. So, tell you what, I'll just head to this tractor, get her going. We'll just do a couple of rows here while we're waiting for the combine to come around. I'll try to keep an eye on it down there. I'm really excited because now we can go bale this, and I don't know how long it'll take to bale all this. I imagine it'll take a while. So, but I don't know if I'll show all that. You know, sometimes, you know, this is my personal save. You know, there was some advice given to me by Atomic 67 in terms of making videos. I think the other day he suggested having a different save for the YouTube videos versus, you know what, the one I enjoyed personally. Well, I kind of started my YouTube videos on my personal save, and I'll maybe keep them here. Maybe just what I need to be more judicious with is instead of recording literally everything I'm doing in game, which is kind of what I've done for past episodes here, is to maybe only record part of it. The thing of it is I know I will end up recording more if I show all of it than I would if I only show part of it. Now, did my combine make another round, or is it just coming around the mountain? No, I think it's coming around for the first time, so I'll be able to turn on course play. And we all know how course play is going to work in that little field down there. It's probably not even worth putting in or setting up, other than maybe having him drive over to storage. You know, even what I'm doing here now and making these windrows, I kind of think that it wasn't until Farm Sim 17 that you would be able to hire having this done. You know, if you wanted to do it hired wise, you had to use Courseplay or something like that. Or I say like that, that's pretty much all we had available in 15 to do it. But I think once you started in 17, you could do even what I'm doing here now. In higher mode, even in the basic game. So started to get more handy. I think at 15, you know, they started to allow us to hire the fertilizer spreader. I almost think at 13 you couldn't do that, or maybe it was a sprayer. So they've slowly added, you know, these additional features over time, which is helpful to those of us that, you know, want to do multiple tasks kind of all at the same time. So I'll get him setting there, and I want to go back over here. All right, Johnny, can you find the combine and unload him without getting yourself stuck? Oh, no, 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 no. You know something? I just noticed 2 combined courses. That is not what we want. We only want number 8. There. That would have caused troubles for sure. Alright, well, we'll give him a chance. Let's go back to our field. Oh, he was already lined up. Can you knock this down? You know, in the last episode, maybe you all are getting tired of hearing about this, my experiences in school and with teachers. I know everybody, um, and I don't mean, some of it is just trying to figure out what to talk about to people, and I don't know if it's of interest or not. It's something that's on my mind at the moment, so that's kind of why, I guess, why I'm sharing it. But it would fascinate me to hear everybody else's experiences, learning and when they grew up, what their teachers were, the people that impacted their lives. And so, I know I'm sharing a lot about many of my teachers and whatnot, and some of it is just simple admiration, respect for them. I probably need to turn. Yep, let me see if it'll go with this. Drive now. Now, nope, nope, nope. There's no need to turn. There was no need there, friend. All you got to do is hunt for this dot, this one, right here, right there. Now, will you go? Ah! What are you doing? Oh, more courseplay confusion. So maybe what I'll do is I'm just going to put them in the field. Everybody hold your nose. Alright, can you find the front door? There, Ah, goodness. Sometimes they do like to find that end point that they spring off of, but nope, he keeps looking for the fence. I tell you what, hard to find good help these days. Woo, that was close. Okay, now I don't know why you're going way over there. That really maybe what it is, since he needs to be repaired, he's doing wonky things and the tractor isn't driving straight. Who knows? I just can't make heads or tails out of this. You put him on the trail. This is just really, really bizarre. He's able to detect this particular... Let me reveal more. Okay, that got pretty narrow there. So maybe... Let me just go a little bit further out there. Maybe it got confused as to which one to follow. Can I start him here and will he go? Wow. This is unbelievable. Let me throw the course out. I'll restart it. Look at that. Clear out the clutter and all of a sudden he finds where he's supposed to go. Go figure. I throw my hands up. I don't really know. He needs to be repaired. Whatever. I think the driver needs to be fired. That's probably the best repair I can do, is just have a different driver. What is it that bosses say when they're frustrated? No, if you can't get someone to do it, you gotta have yourself do it. That's the only person you can end up trusting. And Atomic 67 basically told me that, to stop fussing with courseplay and just do the driving myself. But I figure I want to try still, because it sometimes does a little bit of good. I mean, like right now, he's taking the crop over to storage, I think he can pretty well do that part all on his own. You know, maybe when he comes into the field and periodically there's hiccups and whatnot, but sometimes he will offload the combine in the right way, and it gives just enough time that I can come and do some of these other things. Otherwise, you'd have a whole long episode of me just doing all this work here. Ah, I just remembered something. Back on my teachers, which I was talking about, um, I think as we all know, there are varying temperaments and dispositions, and their types of humor is just as different as any other part of the population. And one of the funniest things I ever saw or heard in school from one of my teachers happened in the bathroom of all places. The bathrooms we had in our high school set up for typical teenagers where there is zero trust. And you know what teen kids would do. If you had faucets where you could turn on a faucet like a normal person, well, you just know there was going to be some teenager that would leave the faucet running just to see if they could drain the tank or whatever that the school had, or just in general principles to be a jerk or dork or whatever. They would just leave the water running. So what we had in school was, and this is really old school. Sometimes you'll have uh, those sinks where there is two spigots for the hot and cold water, which is really a pain in the neck. I mean, how are you supposed to mix very hot water with very cold water to get the warm water? One of your hands is freezing cold, the other is blistering hot, and it's like, how are you supposed to do that, reasonably speaking? So, but this ardent enough, when they would put two spigots for hot and cold, and they had a regular handle on there that you could turn. But in here, they had push button. So not only did you have hot and cold on separate spigots, it was push button. And it not even one of those where you push it in and it'll send water out for a little while, while the button slowly goes back up. Oh no. You had to press it constantly or you wouldn't get any water to come out. I mean, how stupid is that? With both hot and cold separated like that. But like I say, it was a bathroom for teenagers, and sometimes the teachers used it also. Oh, and it looks like my tractor is slipping again. What else is new, huh? Let me go over there and course play. I tell you. No, and even that particular mod, Auto Combine, I don't know what's up with it. It goes in, it... Alright, can you find the Combine? No, 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 not over there. It's over there, son. Nope, you're looking in the wrong area. Over here, eyes front. Nothing to see over there but the wall. There we go. Except now, the guy's turning the corner, silly. Well, hopefully you'll stay out of the way. Reset my GPS. Anyway, I was in there one day, and I think I was done with my business, not that that matters, and so trying to wash my hands in one of the other sinks, and there was an exchange student kid that we had in there. I don't remember what nation he was from. It's probably a good thing because, I certainly don't mean the joke that I heard in there, in a racial type context. Um, but he was trying to make sense of these silly American sinks, and what he did, and he was very flexible, he stood there on one leg and he lifted the other leg up to press down on one of the buttons. Now, it still didn't get the problem covered of, pressing two buttons at once that were on opposite sides of the sink, so you could have some kind of warm water in there or whatever. Still didn't solve that. But it's like, how do you even press this thing and try to wash your hands? So he solved the problem by lifting a foot up and he would hold it down on that button. Like I say, he was really flexible because this was a standard sized sink, height or whatever. And so he held it down in there. The water could flow. He could stick both hands under there and wash it. Well, one of my math teachers happened to see this, and he just went to the kid and he deadpanned. He said, "You know, in American restrooms, we don't have to lift a leg when we use the bathroom." And I don't know, I just thought that was so funny to hear that. And I don't know that the exchange student, whoever he was, picked up on that. And I don't think the teacher meant it in a mean-spirited way. I just thought it was kind of funny. And, it's one of those things. English wasn't his first language, so it's odds are he didn't pick up on that. Just how being teased by the teacher like that, what he was really saying. But I'm sure when Americans travel and are exchange students to other nations, there are probably things that we get laughed at too. Hopefully, all in good fun of ways and manners of saying things. Um, I know a number of years ago, I can't remember if, I've mentioned this on here. We had some Russian families come visit our area, and they came to our church, and my mom kind of took them under her wing to teach them a little English. And as they, I know I've talked about that process in here before, as they learned more, they got better and better at it, but there always was a few things that never quite clicked, if you will, or took longer, and which is to be understood. There's a lot to know in learning another language, and you're fresh off the boat, so to speak. But in English, I think we all know what a choir is. It's a group of singing people, and whether a church or school or whatever, it's a group of people singing. And in Russian, the word for choir, if you looked at it spelled, it'd be just three letters, XOR, only in their language, the X is kind of a H sound. So it kind of comes out as hor. That's choir in there. So he was talking to me about hor this and hor that, and I knew what he was saying because at the time I had been taking Russian at Oregon State, just for kicks, and so I knew what he was trying to say. And I finally stopped him. I said, "Do you realize what you're saying?" And he was confused until then he was really embarrassed. When I told him, he said, "Well, what is a whore?" Well, I told him, and I think his face turned red. He wasn't trying to talk about that at all, but especially when I think he was describing some church, so it was doubly embarrassing to be talking about a whore in church. But I'm sure there are anomalies in other languages, that would come out like that, to where English speakers would be quite embarrassed by how we would say a particular word or what have you. Just one of those things. Oh, let me park him over here. Well, I apologize. I think this episode is going a little bit longer than I was thinking, but you know what? I am still going to keep it going because we're going to get this combining done on this episode. Yeah, waiting for fill level to be. We're going to continue with our three-ring circus. I'll get the wind rowing done kind of about the same time. Do the obligatory 2 rounds, and there isn't too much even left at this field. Maybe give him a little space. And I maybe need to get off my school kick here, just thinking back. I know, there's probably any number of stories I could tell about my teachers. I just think of another one now. This fellow was a world history type teacher. Wow, did he take a piece of you in terms of the work that he required and just the tests that were constant to make sure you were paying attention. But I remember one fun thing he did with the kids in his class was routinely would play Jeopardy. And I grew up without a television, so I didn't even hardly know what Jeopardy was. It was some game show where I guess the really, really smart people, could answer all these questions or whatever as to whatever categories of questions that they had, and so I didn't know a lot of those, but he would do it in a history context, and so he'd set up teams of us, and we'd compete against one another in class and whatnot, and I really appreciated it when teachers went the extra mile to create an environment to where you learned without even knowing you were learning, if I can put it that way. They just made it fun, and yeah, respect to them for doing that. It all is part of the puzzle, and I'm not a teacher, but there's times I have to, my job at work with accounting and whatnot, I do hold a class. Matter of fact, I almost think that's coming up in another week, which means I need to prepare for it. To teach some basic things about accounting, which isn't the most exciting subject in the world for most people, but it's important, if you're in business, to know a little bit about it. So figuring out creative ways to do it, even for adults, in a fun way to where they get the message, even if they don't particularly enjoy all the subject matter, I think is useful. And truth be told, I mean, when it comes to history, I mean, that's pretty interesting in its own right. I've always enjoyed history, but I enjoyed it all the more once I got out of school, because I no longer had to take a pesky test or write a paper or do any research projects or that kind of thing. You kind of get out of that part by exiting school. Now, what are you doing? Are you looking at the fence again longingly? Trying to take a bath down there in that river? Who knows? Who knows? Said he's supposed to drive behind it, but there we go. Probably waiting for him to finish figuring out how to make the turn. But speaking of history and wow. Whoa, that was close. I guess the fence was avoided, but it shows you how much space is needed just to do that. But speaking of history, that tended to be where a lot of papers happened. There were some other classes that had some papers. I think in one of the videos previously I mentioned, I guess it was kind of a paper, it was a science project with pig color, whatever, but I I was thankful that my teachers, the most of the time they would let you pick the subject matter, within certain parameters. So they'd have some question they wanted answered, and if you could, handle it in an agriculture sense, they would let you do it, or whatever topic of your choosing. So I I would pick ag topics as often as I could. I didn't care what course it was. I tried to pick something in agriculture. And so my very first term paper I remember writing was on the manorial system, which I believe was in Europe. I don't remember what time era, but where you had the serfs and masters and lords, those kinds of estates, basically the uber wealthy. No, 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 tractor, you don't need to go that way. Why don't you come over here where there's plenty of space to drive and get around? There we go. At the time, I didn't even know how to type, so my mom typed it up after I wrote it all down longhand. And it was just on an old school typewriter. What are you doing? This is just bizarre behavior. Is this what you're doing again? I did some of this last time, right? I just don't understand. But what can I say? What are you doing? Oh, this is just bizarre. I think maybe if it's allowed to figure things out on its own, maybe that works for the best. Yeah, see, it isn't even going in here. It's going to find that. Then it's turning. But why? And then it'll probably look for this. I know sometimes it looks for the stop sign. Maybe I need to extend it further into the field. Ah, there we go. Now he's lined up right. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Take that off. Come back to our humble combine. Maybe there's another row I can get out. So anyway, the first one I did was on the manorial system of serfs and lords and rich and poor and kind of how that whole system worked, which was kind of related to agriculture. There was just something about it that fascinated me, so that's why I did my paper on it. But I did a term paper on John Deere, the forming of the company, kind of how it started in a lowly shop in Illinois, I believe. I think that's where he was, with the world's first steel plow. And on the prairie where they had some really sticky soil, gumbo, I think they called it sometimes, where the wooden plows that they had at the time or the iron, was just too sticky. And so the farmer would spend a lot of time scraping it off the plow instead of doing a lot of plowing as they were opening the prairie, kind of in the central and western part of the U.S. at that time. And so John Deere had an innovation of the steel plow. And obviously, we all know kind of where John Deere ended up, and they're one of the world's premier equipment companies today. And I think it's pretty familiar to probably anybody watching this video as to just who John Deere is and what they're about, like many of the other manufacturers. So I did a term paper on that. I really enjoyed that. I did a term paper on the combine itself. It's like this combine just ahead of us, as to how the inner workings of it worked, the basics on that, and also the development of it over time. From back in the day when harvest would happen by hand, and you would cut it in with this little sickle, this curved metal blade, and it just backbreaking work out in the field. But that's what they did. And then, even the technological innovation of the scythe, where some guy could stand upright at least and cut hay well, both hay and grass and grain in the field. And then another innovation, the cradle, that they would put on the end of the scythe so that the grain could lay in there and it be kind of sorted, if you will, for bundling. And they'd, bundle all the straw together and shock it in the field. And so the paper included information on that and the stationary threshing machine, or the old school ways of threshing, even before the threshing machine, where they would use animals. You can even read about that in the Bible, about oxen used to just walk all over the grain and it would thresh it out. And they would use the wind. They would go to a windy place and drop grain from a higher place to a lower place and let the wind carry it. So, and just all these contraptions that mankind has invented to try to make their life a little bit easier, to get to where we have now the combined harvester. And even the term combine is relatively different. We think of the term combine, it's to put two things together, and that's kind of what the combine is. You combine the act of threshing and the act of cutting all in one. I'm just going to help this guy out. We're going to take one last pass to get done with this. Here we go. Going cab. This is the final swipe. Happy, happy, happy day. I think in my global studies class, I even tried to link up with a farm there, and at the time I was developing an interest kind of in Russian. And so this was just before or just after the wall fell in East Germany. That isn't going to work. Let me see if I can stretch it over this way and sneak that in there. Can I get it in there? Nope. It must not be totally lined up, so we'll maybe park it over here and go get, let's just stop him and come around the other side and offload the combine one more time. So I did a paper in Global Studies on the Russian collective farm, which was kind of going out of favor then. You know, it never was a really good idea. You know, this is where I know every system is going to have its pluses, its minuses, and I'm not here to just be a critic of that, although just except to say I'm very thankful for what we have here with capitalism, to where if you work hard, at least so far, the government will let you keep most part of what you earn, so therefore you care a lot about it. Now, oh, I bet I know what he's doing. No, he shouldn't. If you're on a collective farm, of course, someone else owns it, you don't ever get to own it. You can work very, very hard, but your efforts don't matter other than meeting some target that someone else who doesn't care particularly about the farm wants you to meet. It's just a different dynamic, and with human nature, you know, a lot of these collective farms would be, so I think the food output. Oh, courseplay. You know what? I'm just going to move him out here. I'm going to take him over there manually. I'm tired of fussing around with this in the harvest field. We'll just leave him parked there. We're going to take our little combine out. If I had money, I'd buy a placeable pressure washer, because if anybody ever needed a bath, it is our little combine here. Also needs some repairs. I'm just going to kind of park it over here in this cubby for a little while so it can take a much deserved rest. I'll zip this down here and get it emptied out. Maybe bump this up so I can try to go a little bit more quickly, although I'm going to be throttled a little bit because I've incurred so much damage. Or I say it's rather been my lousy driver. Oh, good grief. It's good to bring the harvest finally to an end. And yeah, this episode's going to end up being a little bit longer than normal. Apologies for that. But hey, I figure if you have suffered through, clear to this point, then maybe you're all right with a silly accountant jabbering in the background over this, that, and the other thing. It doesn't really amount to hello beans or matter to anybody, but hey, we're talking. Gotta have something to speak about in these videos. There's our sheep. Interesting, I just saw it out there in the field. Whoa, I'm maybe not as good a driver as our courseplay driver either. It's kind of challenging using the keyboard. I need to get steering wheel set back up, so do it the normal way like others. There we go. Back we'll go to the farm. What else to say on one's education? Speak now or forever hold your peace? Maybe not quite. I don't know. Oh yes, and I did a term paper on grass seed too. How can I leave that out? I was working summers on the Lone Oak at the time, and it was fresh on my mind. So, and you know, I've mentioned term papers and science projects, but it also entered everything else. You know, I had a speech class, and I remember giving some speeches on how a combine worked, and I related it to a mousetrap. I remember having debates on open field burning, which we use here locally for the grass seed industry. Just all sorts of things, and like I say, I'm mainly thankful my teachers allowed me the latitude to pick subject areas that were of interest, and it wasn't just me. I mean, obviously other people chose whatever was of interest to them too. So, you know, contrast that with my son, who's gone through school, and a lot of times his teachers, for whatever reason, have been a whole lot less or a whole lot less flexible on what they let him choose as a topic. So, and I mean, sometimes you got to be able to roll with the punches and talk about other things too that maybe you would rather not, but that are still important. Whether it's a word context or something else. So, I don't know if there's much more to say about schooling or whatever. I'm sure there's all kinds of things that could come up. I mean, I haven't even got to put a fraction of my teachers, nor did I dip into grade school. I mean, my goodness, all kinds of memories could be shared about that also. But at a certain level, who cares, right? I mean, anybody listening to this would have their own memories. But, I mean, even if nobody listens to these, one of the things I've come to is if YouTube continues as some kind of an institution, there are now many videos that I have uploaded where I'm sharing some of these things. Maybe it's something, my kids would be interested in someday. I don't know. So, if there are memories, I guess that reminds me of my father years ago. He purchased what is called a grandfather book, and he gave it to his grandfather, which would be my great grandfather, of course, and asked him to fill it out. And it asked all sorts of questions about great grandpa's life. My great grandfather came through World War One. He just had many unique experiences, and he took the time to fill it out. He was a little bit more of a scholar. Well, I tried to do the same thing. I only know one of my grandfathers, that happened to be alive. The other one died. And so I give him the same book. I scrubbed it of all of great grandpa's answers, and I figured I'd have my grandfather, share this with me. And well, he kept the book, but he never did fill it out. It just wasn't his thing to sit down and write, and that's okay. But I don't know. Maybe I just love history. If there are memories you want your family to know, try to figure out some way to write that down. It might be pretty meaningful to them when you're gone. So, speaking of being gone, I think I've overstayed my welcome in this episode, which is coming up on probably about an hour. So I'll cut it off here and let you all go. Thanks for listening and for stopping by, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.